All right. Hey, Tilo. Um, Super nice to have you.
See.
Long time no see and long time no speak, especially never in English, I think.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give a little bit of a context here. I was going through my LinkedIn lately to see who I could talk to. First of all, like maybe to sell my coaching to be honest, and also to just if that's not a possibility to have a podcast with some interesting people. But I had you in mind for a while because I saw that you were one of the co-founders, I think, and like especially COO. And as an operations guy, I love operations and COOs. Um, I've been meaning to talk to you for a while. But just a little bit of context. We met at school in Ingolstadt, Bavaria. And I think the first time that we really met was in theater class, which was like an extra curricular activity. Um, and I always liked you, but like you were 2 or 3 grades ahead of me, and then you went on to live your own life, and I lived mine. I moved to Austria, then had a semester abroad in Bangkok, internship in Myanmar, did some business stops along the way. Some of my viewers already know, and at some point I started LinkedIn, and you got suggested, and now you're in Brazil, and I just wanna know what happened to you and how did this all how did this all come to place?
It's been so what has it been? At least 15 or 16 years since school, since I left school at least. And a lot has happened. I mean, like travels, living on 3 different continents, bachelor's and master's degree, several jobs, found love on a different continent, and moved there. A lot of things have happened, and I mean, it's been a journey. It's been a journey, but I think this this feeling of being an international citizen is something that I've always kind of liked. So I think I'm in the right spot, and I found my new home in Brazil, as you said. I've been here for 7 years now, and can absolutely identify with the culture. I've become a Brazilian citizen recently. So I'm fully ingrained. Like I would say I look like a Latino, but I feel like one. And although Brazil is quite diverse, so there's no stereotypical appearance here, which is pretty nice. So yeah, a lot has happened. I guess like if you want, I can give you a quick like overview of like what I've done in specific.
It should not even be quick. I mean, this is what we're here to talk about. You know, I started this podcast as leading better lives, then it's become surviving white belt, which is a little bit what we're going for, but in the end I would just want to be talking to cool dudes and females maybe in the future as well. But it's all about individual journeys. And uh yeah, I just want to know what happened after Christoph Scheiner Gymnasium in Ingolstadt, because this is where I basically lost track of you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think right after school I went to Bayreuth to do a bachelor's degree in business administration. And that was because I wanted to keep my options open. I think like half of the people I met, during my studies kind of did not yet know in what field of business directly they want to go. So like let's just, study general business administration and then see what you like, right? I discovered quickly that I really liked the international, management piece of it, and also marketing and strategy. So I went down that route. I did a semester abroad in China, in Beijing, in 2012 now. Oh, it's been a while. And that was revelational for me because it was just, it was very different. I kind of opened my eyes towards so many more things, and ever since I think I've been to 50 countries, mostly with a backpack, and used my time during studies as well quite wisely when it comes to that. I was like, okay, I had a part-time job. I earned money and I spent it on travel. I earned money, spent it on travel, right? Like this was kind of my thing, and I don't regret it. I don't regret having saved that money because it gave me such a different perspective on people, on culture, on life, on like what I want as a person, what I would like my world to look like, right? And that made a big part of of my personality up basically, and that's pretty much why I am who I am, and I think the steps after that really were a result of what I did during my bachelor's degree. I did a master's degree afterwards in England in strategic marketing. I was in London. It was a dream of mine. London is, it's a I don't know, passion. Like I've always loved the history of the city and the country in general, but I've always wanted to live in London, and that dream I've made come true. Did my master's degree there, and then I went full on into the the professional world. Like even during studies, I've done internships and smaller jobs at Audi. I mean, we're from Ingolstadt. It's kind of it's next door, so you just you apply and see where it goes. I worked at L'Oreal and worked at a services company as well, and like in different roles, right? In logistics, in product marketing, in services management, right? So like completely different things. And then after my master's degree, went on to live in Frankfurt, worked at a strategy and marketing consultancy, and worked primarily with the automotive industry and telecommunications, but also, and that's where the whole passion for data security comes from. Worked with a privacy and data security focused consultancy on establishing strategies and kind of helping companies align with the newly introduced GDPR in Europe back then, right? And I kind of like opened my mind towards the importance of data security and data privacy for us personally as well. So that was pause for a moment though, because I found the love of my life. Like people say, at least here in Brazil, people say, foreigners usually come to live here for work, for love, or craziness. I think it was a little bit of those three for me, because I did find a job here at a Fintech with less than 200 people at the time, and now they're in the thousands and doing pretty well. They're the biggest collateral loan, digital collateral loan provider in Brazil, Latin America, I think actually. So that's pretty cool. And again, a totally different field, and I worked in different positions here. I worked in marketing, in business development, in developing new business segments and new products internally for upsell, cross-sell, next sell, activities that would engage customers more. Then I established the first customer lifecycle management, so kind of the first CRM approach of the company. And on a deeper level, in terms of like, look, let's create a relationship with key customers first and try to understand them better, what they need, what they want, etc. And then branch out to general customer base, right? And at that time, I then I already spoke to a friend of mine in Ireland who wanted to found a business, and I said, look, I said I tasted blood during the whole startup experience here in Brazil. Let's brainstorm, and then the copycat of GDPR was introduced in Brazil. It's called LGPD, literally the same thing. I think it's like 90% overlap, which is pretty good. It's pretty advanced for a country of this size and also of this complexity, right? And I saw something there, and I was like, dude, we're gonna have to do something in the field. This is something that's that's apparently a big problem, and I've had this prior experience with it, and we went on to doing a lot of research, of what the actual underlying problem is. of that, and then found the business on top of that. I guess that's like that's a longer story. Like I guess we'll come back to that. But like in general, coming to Brazil, the reason was my now wife. And it wasn't even for me. It wasn't even like a second. Didn't even take a second for me to say like I'm gonna come down to Brazil, right? I wanted to get out of Frankfurt, and my job at the time, right? It was a perfect timing, and it was like, look, you don't come over. I'll go there, and start a new life there, because it was risk free. Let's face it, like so many people are afraid of taking that step because what can happen? What can happen? And so many people saying you're so brave and going. It's like, why am I brave? Like, what do I have to risk? I didn't have kids at the time. I don't have a house, and even if I did, I would rent it out. Like, okay, I'm gonna leave my parents and friends behind, but it's not that I'm never gonna visit them, right? So what's the risk? If it doesn't work out, I'm gonna come back. Go for a new job, and that's it. So like, if you switch jobs in the same country, you can also switch jobs to a different country, right? Like, there's no risk, so go ahead. If you have kids, that's a different story, then, right? Then you have somebody to take care of. But if it works out for the whole family to move, then why not? So I never understood these people who were so afraid of like taking a step outside of their comfort zone, and I was super easygoing. So okay, let's come down, and I never regretted it. It was the best decision I could have done in my life, and I found so many lovely friends here that became family, and of course my wife's family, and I do miss home in quotation marks, because what is home? Home right now is here, but the original home, right? And my family and friends sometimes, but it's all about finding your own way. That's really what's important, and I feel extremely comfortable here. Let's see what the future brings. This was a little bit it, and we can dive deeper into Waltrée as well, but just wanted to see if you want to tell me a little bit about your story as well.
Gladly. And you said a lot of interesting things that I can definitely relate to. So yeah, also just like you, I started studying in Kufstein in 2012, sports culture and event management. And then like we had a mandatory semester abroad, and I did that in Bangkok. I actually wanted to go to Chile, but I wasn't doing really well, like grade-wise studying, because I was focusing on running a small NPO called Genussmittel, where we were able to actually organize events. So we had basically the foundation for our course, for our year, basically to actually legally run events. So parties, book clubs, like small movie showings, but also sports events. And yeah, we were a group of like 6 friends. Basically, the way that it was set up was like in the second semester, the older semester always would hand over Genussmittel to the new students for 1 year, and a bunch of different groups would form and apply, more or less, like present themselves to their own fellow students, and make their case on why they should be the group of 6 to 7 people running it. And I ended up being the CEO, or the Obmann, of Genussmittel, mainly because I had the least specialized skill, I would say. So I
A big decision maker.
So but apparently the others thought I would be skillful enough to kind of like get the title, and we ran it together. It was super fun. We made quite a bit of money, like more than all of the other owners and groups did before. So it was just a success, and this all started just at the end of school, where we did the car parties, or actually Q parties, because I went into the G8 and we had Qualifikationsstufe instead of Kollegstufe, so we were the first ones to do Q parties, and I was like the vice speaker of the class, or one of those people, basically, and I really got involved into this party planning, and I loved it. And then I got involved into the planning of the Abi-Reise, and this kind of event planning totally became my thing. And A friend already started studying media management in Austria. My dad was always like saying, like, "Oh, don't do anything with management. Managers are all evil." So I actually went to study sociology and political sciences for one semester at LMU in Munich, which was terrible because I actually wanted to work with people. I would have loved to become a psychotherapist or psychologist, but my grades were way too bad. I finished with a 3.1 Abitur, which was like nobody would have taken me. So I would have had to move to Austria, but back then I had just started my first real relationship and I didn't want to go. So I really tried for one semester, but only then I really realized that I had statistics, and my worst course in high school was maths. So like after seeing the statistics class, I was like, holy hell, like I'm never gonna survive this. And I don't want to go through another 3 to 5 years of trauma. So no, this is not gonna be it. And one of my good friends from back then from English that made basically had the same realization. He's studying something that he's never gonna finish. And then we went to basically look for something new together. And he actually found SKVM, Sports, Culture and Event Management in Kufstein. We had a mutual friend studying there already, who was the brother of one of my fellow students, a really good friend, Bobby. And we were able to visit him during the registration process and doing the tests and everything. And I got in. And this is how the whole thing started. And like for me, it was then super easy to move to Austria. I had broken up with my back then girlfriend already beforehand because it didn't work. And yeah, I was free, as you said. I mean, I just did the leap to Austria, you to Bayreuth, right? But then, yeah, Bangkok was the first big one. And Bangkok happened because it was affordable. My parents never had a lot of money. And my dad was even suggesting that I could do my semester abroad in Germany because, you know, like in an Austrian university, I could do my semester abroad in Germany. I was like, seriously, it's all about like meeting new cultures, understanding new stuff, and it's really funny that you went to Asia as well. And I've been to China a few times, and I can tell everybody it's like even more of a culture shock in China because in Thailand at least I was in a community in the Bangkok University community that was pretty international. So it was very interesting, and I got to hang with a lot of randomly Swedish people who had been experts there and studying for a while, and I became a good friend. So I actually immersed myself into living the expat life in Bangkok. Had even like a Thai Dutch girlfriend for the short time being there, who showed me the Thai culture, like the crazy stuff as well, and also like the nice stuff, the real cultural aspects of what it means to be in Thailand. And that was just so interesting. And then for me, it opened my eyes to the world and yeah, just how different people lived. And shortly before that, I started already dabbling into some martial arts. Like I started karate when I was small, but then it was just katas, you know, like we never really got to do something. And the in-house tournament was always me competing against one of my best friends, and it was just like judges were like judging our katas, and I always lost 2-1, and it was just frustrating. And at Orange Bell, I just cried so much in front of my crush, which was the trainer's daughter, and it was so devastating that I just left it. And only after almost 10 years or so in Kufstein, one of my fellow students, he offered MMA classes for very little money. And my friends and I, we went, and he was a BJJ brown belt at the time. So he started showing us mostly jiu-jitsu moves, and I fell in love. But in Kufstein, it was pretty difficult to find a good school. So I kind of put that on the back burner. But once I knew I was going to Bangkok, I started looking up gyms, and I immediately found one that I went to. And yeah, like throughout the years, I continued to go, but never regularly until 2019. But yeah, the reason why I'm making this detour through jiu-jitsu is because this has also been a part of my journey and of my self-development and traveling journey ever since. And yeah, after Thailand, I went to Myanmar because I really wanted to stay in Asia. And one of my Swedish friends, I had another Swedish friend who was working at a golf estate in Myanmar. Myanmar was back then just being opened up from military dictatorship, and it was like the wild east, basically, so to say. And it was crazy. I was living in a gated community in the same house with my boss. It was a little bit weird circumstances, bad communication. I thought I would get pay, or at least get paid for my flights, which my parents were not really happy that they had to pay for, but I really wanted this experience. And my mom was always very supportive to just like be able to support me as much as I could. So it was a little bit of a tough time, but also so rewarding, like working, in this different kind of society, not just being a student and like enjoying life from that aspect, but also really understanding what it means to be working in a society, especially as an expat who was earning substantially more money than the locals there. And I was just an F&B assistant, but like I was being met with so many struggles of communication and of basic understanding of working. One of the first things that I encountered there was we were being invited, Björn and I, to like a celebration of a newborn child, basically. So his bar manager just had gotten a kid, and they invited us to their home, which was like favela like looking, like a gated community, just like a favela with like, yeah, like wooden and metal sheds. And we were sitting on the floor, and they had food prepared, and they were just sharing everything with us, and like I was shocked. It was almost like shell shock because they were so kind and so nice, and they were willing to share everything with us who were coming in our shirts and suits, and it was embarrassing almost, you know. But this really opened me up to be, yeah. I just wanted to help people, like, and to enable them. I already had that in Thailand, seeing that in the Muay Thai community, like with Thai people also being generally poor, but having a real code of honor. And I once had a black eye from MMA training. I wanted to do a shot, and then I got a knee into my face. And from then on, like, for the time that I had this black eye, like all Thai taxi drivers would ask me if I do Muay Thai, and like with the little Thai that I spoke, they would respect me so much. And I learned also, I took the course of Thai. We did a little bit of haggling with our university to actually get it accredited. But since we studied culture and event management, right, sports culture and event management, we could really argue about the culture case. And it opened up so many doors. Really, just 20 words of Thai language immersed in a totally different experience because the people respected you so much more. And now my monologue is over because I'm really curious about your China experience and how it was for you, to be going from, yeah, Ingolstadt and Bayreuth, where us Germans, right, like we're growing up super safely, and our struggles, of course, are our struggles, right? And you the worst thing that you've ever experienced is the worst thing that you've ever experienced. But then you go somewhere else, and I mean, you start scratching your head. It's like, wow. And I was complaining about my life back at home. How was that for you?
Absolutely. I think the problems that we have in Germany um, it's good to complain about the status quo because that just takes you always to a different level. You should never accept the status quo. It's fine. But I think you have to like gain perspective and see how lucky you are. Just because we were born in Germany, we're already more privileged than 90% of the world's population, right? And and when people complain about things, I'm always thinking like, go and travel, to a part of the world where people are not as privileged. But people are still, as you said as well, people are still like in this community and in a embedded in a culture that transmits that kind of like feeling of togetherness and respect and also happiness, right? This is what I feel, what I felt like over the world and over the years, that people, again, you don't need money to be happy. It's all about the society. It's all about your societal connections and friends you have and the family support you have. And I think China was kind of the beginning of that. I just want to go back a tiny bit because, like, as you mentioned before, I've been doing karate for like over 20 years now. So I have a black belt in karate.
Nice.
And it's shaped me like massively, Shotokan karate in this case, very specifically. And it's been like the one passion that has followed me throughout my whole life, and it shaped me in many ways in terms of respect towards other people, being open, being agile, and balanced and coordinated, etc. Like so many things that like you do on a physical level that you combine with that mental aspect of martial arts, especially of those traditional martial arts, and jiu-jitsu is one of them. That that brings you that brings two worlds together and brings you a sort of peace internally of like being able to deal with problems in a different way. And I think China, the reason life brought me to China in the first place was, of course, you were seeing back then China was kind of like gaining traction, more and more business would come from China, etc. You would see what would become a world power. So it was kind of like an obvious, professional decision, but at the same time, it's the cradle of so many things in Asia as well, culturally, economically, historically as well. Of course, I kind of wanted to immerse myself a little bit into that country, and then go beyond it and discover more of the continent, right? And what I've seen in China, which is like baffling, like I think it was the same experience that you've made in Southeast Asia, where you come in and you're being treated in a different way. How can I say? A different way than we would be treated in Germany. Not because we're foreigners. That's of course an aspect of it as well. Because you look different, you are different, you're potentially more interesting than others. But I think society is shaped in a way where you're accepted, different in a different manner than you are in Germany or in other developed countries in the world. And developed is always it's a piece of definition, like what is developed. So let's say highly industrialized nations, right? Um, and it opened my eyes towards like what is equality, what is poverty, what is privilege, what does it mean to be happy, right? Like all of these things like come crashing down on you, and you're like surprised by what you've missed so far in life, and you come back to your how do you say that, your protected world, of like not really many problems in terms of crime and the state not supporting you and so on and so forth, right? And I think that's really what shaped me in the beginning, and then branching out, of course, traveling, backpacking and trying to understand more of the world and how it functions, how it works, and then moving in the end to Brazil, which is one of the top economies worldwide, but it's a huge and massive social divide, between the rich and the poor. The poor population is the biggest part of the population, and you see it every single day. And I've been living with poverty now for, not in poverty, like again, my situation due to what I earn here together with my wife. We belong to that bubble of people who are well off, but 90% of the population is not. And you see that every day, walking through the streets, driving somewhere, going on vacation in the country, etc. And it shapes you, it makes you aware of how lucky you actually are. And then you want to give back as well, like this is this fair? Like, I'm lucky. And is it fair that I was lucky and others who were born in a favela, for example, they're not? Like, let's face it, there's 0.001% chance that a person born in a favela has is gonna be economically well set in the future, because there's just no education to be able to reach that point, right? And there's no incentive as well, because you grow up in that bubble, right? People grow up in bubbles, and that's really a big issue. And you think about how you can solve that potentially with your surroundings and with the influence you have. But it's very, very difficult. Very difficult.
Yeah, it's super interesting what you're saying, and I think it all comes down to maximizing your impact in your small circle of influence, right? And it is also, I think, our mission in life as those who won the lottery of life already by being born in Germany, being born to like not the worst circumstances, because even though we're born in Germany, we could have also had a much worse lottery ticket even in that space, right? So, and I don't know, I've been raised by loving parents, even though they're now divorced. You know, the only thing that they definitely always instilled with in me was to be a nice person. And even though I would say that I was a dick for quite a while, I don't know, definitely throughout my teenage years, and the time in Thailand definitely shaped me. And ever since, also through martial arts, I've been working on my ego and reading books and everything, therapy, whatnot. All of these experiences kind of informed the person who I am right now and who I still strive to be. Because, as you said, like I think it's never finished. Never accept the status quo. I'm not seeing it as in a way of to be anxious, to be constantly needing to get better, but just as a Kaizen way of thinking where you're just doing little steps, little by little, and you're not comparing yourself to Bill Gates now, but I'm comparing myself to who I was yesterday or who I was last year. And then actually, I can be pretty happy with myself, but still not entirely satisfied. Because I can think that, yeah, actually, if I went this far, what what is the limit? And this is so interesting to me. You now founded a company called Waltrée. You're the COO, and you don't have a lot of people. But when I did the research on you, I saw that the World Economic Forum is recommending you. That it is a very nichey thing that you guys are doing, and I'm happy to go back to all of the personal development and traveling, etc. But now let's go into a little bit of Waltrée, how that happened, and what exactly you're doing, because I did my research, but I still didn't quite get it. Maybe I'm too stupid. Maybe I'm too little in the GDPR and into the data privacy protection space. Can you explain it for somebody of average intelligence who doesn't have a lot to do with privacy?
Absolutely. I mean, the cool thing is that at first, and let me start with how I came about founding a company, and then the reasons why exactly that. So I think I touched on that I kind of discovered, data privacy as something that I'm passionate about. Like I've always been quite wary in giving away my data. If it was somewhere like asking for my phone number, email address, ID, etc. I was like, why do you need that? Like, do you really need that? Or like signing up for a website, and then if I didn't need it anymore, I would delete my account. And all of that has become easier with GDPR as well, because you have rights as a consumer, which is really good. And I kind of and then the experience with coming to Brazil and taking a risk that was not really a risk. Opening my eyes towards like, hey, look, I can move countries, I can move continents without taken a step back, but it's a step forward for me. And why would I not do that? And I took, I'm gonna be honest here, I took a 60% salary cut coming to Brazil, because salaries are much lower for a quite high cost of life in Sao Paulo. At least I'm in Sao Paulo right now. The city's not cheap. At least not if you live in a region which is, let's face it, where safety is given, or at least higher than in other regions, which is more central, where you don't have to commute 2 or 3 hours to work. It's a 22 million city. It's insane, right? And it's not cheap if you want to have, a decent life, right? And that salary was just not enough to be able to like save at the same time, right? You can have a good life, but you could not put money back, and that was something which was important for me. And I grew up, I think, in similar conditions as you are. My parents never really had money. They still live in a rental apartment, now, and don't have massive, possessions. So that kind of shaped me in terms of like, okay, like I'm gonna want to save, for old age, etc. So I was looking for opportunities to do that, and then that startup mindset that I've gotten in my job here in Brazil, working at that startup, flourished a little bit. And I was like, okay, look, I know it is risky to like get out of a job to found a company, but at the same time, I couldn't earn less in my own company than I could earn in a Brazilian company at that time with my experience or my position that I was in. So I was like, okay, let's found a company, let's do it, let's go full time on this, raise some money, and then pay myself a salary which is at least equal to the one that I was earning before. So I wouldn't risk anything in terms of my financial situation at the moment, right? And that was kind of like a key moment of like where I was like, okay, look, let's do it. I couldn't have stopped working for a long period of time to be able to found a company and get it to funding. But for a short period of time was possible, and then go ahead and become successful with that was a prospect in my head that was attractive. But I wanted to do something that would help society. I could never go ahead and just find a company that produces a different kind of plastic cup, that doesn't contribute to like something which is either making people happy or better off in terms of health, in terms of privacy in this case, and so on. So I rang up that friend that pinged me before and said, like, let's find a company. I was like, okay, look, we're gonna have to do something in this field. So we did our research, and we found that encryption is broken. When it comes to protecting data, you need a base layer, which is encryption. There's so many tools out there, like I call them first and second layer, right? First layer tools like API security, firewall, app security, all of these tools that companies have and need, and they're good because they're the first line of defense for companies to protect their data. But if you don't have encryption that protects your data in its entirety, you can forget all of these other tools. I have an analogy that says like when you have like 100 security cameras faced at your front door, somebody can still walk in through the back door if you don't protect your back door, right? And what we do is kind of say you still have those cameras around the front door and the back door, and then if somebody still comes in, because let's face it, if somebody wants to come in, they're gonna get it. They would dig a hole, a tunnel, and get into your basement and then come up. It doesn't matter. If somebody wants to get into your house, they're gonna get into your house. And in this case, you need a vault in your basement, and you lock it with a key, and you take that key with you wherever you go. That's kind of the analogy of like what we're doing, but we had to find a way that makes the stuff inside of the vault still usable whilst it is in the vault, right? So we know the two concepts of encryption at rest and in transit, right? In transit, perfect. That's what people call end-to-end encryption, although it's not really end-to-end encryption. I mean, it's kind of end-to-end encrypted because it's between one and the other, but not really when it's in usage, right? And you have encrypted at rest, fine when the data is at rest, and that's what it says on its like sleeping, basically. When it's not being used and it's in a cloud server or your physical server, it's encrypted, it's fine, perfect. They're secure, all good. And we're developing algorithms every day, better algorithms every day that protect that data even more. But what about usage? So when you search your data, when you edit your data, when you analyze your data, when you want to share your data, in these moments, data is not encrypted. And that baffled me at the time. I was like, what? How can that not be? And then we figured out really quickly that it was about usage. Companies would sacrifice security for usability, because if you wanted to use data in an encrypted format, it would slow down the business massively. It's like, imagine, just gonna go wild now, if you wanted to like access your account balance in your banking app, right? You would never be able to wait 20 minutes for that account balance to appear. You would switch banks instantly, right? and that's kind of like I guess like an analogy that I could work with, because if I wanted to share, for example, the data set, and I'm a German company and I have my data stored in a New York AWS data center, and I have a data science team in India, and I want this team to run their analysis on top of that data. And if I wanted to do that in a secure way, I'd have to download the encrypted data set in my New York data center. I would have to ship that in encrypted format, digitally, of course, to India. I would have to decrypt it there. I would have to run their analysis, encrypt it again, ship it encrypted to New York, upload an encrypted format again, right? That process takes ages and costs a lot of money. So why not allow the Indian data science team to run their analysis on top of encrypted data inside of that data center in New York without even shipping it across borders? Or when shipping it across borders, being able to do that in real time. And this
Like
is
a shared safe, basically.
Yeah,
Like
kind of, yeah.
with two doors where I can take the money from one end, like you can put it in and we go through a safe.
I guess so, yeah. If both have the key and both have the access right, and both parties are in congruence when it comes to these rights, then you should be able to access it, but you should not be able to decrypt it during that process of like sharing or accessing, right? Like some teams, of course, wouldn't need access. Like you need to see the data at one point of the journey, right? If you're a customer support attendant, you're gonna need to see, the first name, last name, email address at one point. So you're gonna have to decrypt it at one point, right? We call that last millimeter decryption. But for so many departments and companies and so many people who access the data, they don't need to see the data. Somebody who runs analysis on top of data just needs to see the results, right? And that's kind of like a key aspect of it, but also the search data. If I want to know how many macros I have in my customer database of 200,000 customers, why do I need to see the whole database? I just need to see that there's 5 macros. That's it. So I don't need to decrypt that database to be able to get that answer. And this is kind of like where we come in with our business objective of like we help organizations to protect sensitive data when it's being used, not just in transit or at rest, but like we move away from those traditional approaches and focus on that encryption in use aspect. So even, I mean, there's lots of data that I could quote now, but like most cloud and SaaS providers, they or the security of these tools, they rely on trusting providers. They rely on trusting admins and storage layers, and encryption typically breaks in that moment that you need to search, filter, share, collaborate on top of data, right? That usually breaks then, or that encryption aspect of it basically needs to change, and business leaders. And that's a key aspect. It's not just the technology leaders and people who work with the data, but the business leaders face risk from third-party access, subpoenas, fines, breaches, all of these things, compliance pressure. And the reality is that the data needs to be usable. It needs to remain usable and searchable and analyzable whilst it is encrypted. So that compromise shouldn't exist, right? And we fix that by delivering that cryptographic true zero trust layer that allows companies to keep the cloud and any other third party or adversary completely blind. So the server never even sees the plain text database, right? They never even see the 200,000 customer names. So if I store my data in AWS, I see AWS as the enemy. Because they could technically nowadays, because they have to have the key for you to speed up your business, they technically could access your data, right? So if they can, other third parties could technically as well, right? So I want to avoid that. I see them as an adversary, so I keep the key to myself. They're blind. They never see my data that I upload, and they never hold the keys. So that's really the key behind it. And what we've developed is is a modular approach to how we sell our solutions. So we constructed something called the Vaultree Encrypted Data Suite, VEDS. And there are different SDKs, software development kits, that we can ship to companies to build their solutions with these fully encrypted tools, basically, like, to build into their workflows, into their existing workflows, and to build tools where security travels with the data, right? It's embedded, right? And we have different SDKs for different purposes, like encrypted search, encrypted analytics very soon, encrypted, cryptographic access control, and you get basically zero trust collaboration, encrypted search, and other capabilities with stronger sovereignty and compliance posture. So like we're not forcing the business to choose between usability and privacy. That's really that's the key, literally.
It's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
I can hear you definitely super deep into it. And also into the understanding of it. Well, but yes, I understand that it was a passion or like actually like a need for your safety, to keep your data private, and this is how this all, like, this idea developed from your side. But it didn't sound like you had any coding knowledge or anything prior that would that me as a rookie, like an amateur, would think would be required to be starting such a company. Right? How did that come to?
Yeah, no, and that's the cool thing. And I think there's two things that I want to break as well in people's minds. That is, first of all, you need to have knowledge in a specific field to found a business. I think that's not the case. You just need the right people. I'm not a programmer. I'm not going to be able to do to build what we're building right now. But I found people that I can rely on and trust on, and that is confirmed by third parties, right? That that are renowned. It's not just that I blindly trust somebody developing something for. It has to be tested, right? It has to be third party validated. And the second one is that you need contacts, and you need to have done this degree here with at that university to do XYZ. No, I come from a humble background. You come from a humble background. Like, we didn't grow up rich. I didn't go to Harvard to meet the son of Mark Zuckerberg, to be able to get things off its feet with finger snap, basically. No, I did it because I wanted to change something, and I found a group of people that would like to do that together with me. And we fought hard. We talked to, I think, 60 or 70 investors before the first funding round. And we've received, 59 no's until the first yes came, basically. But you just have to be persistent, right? You have to be persistent and pull through and actually fine-tune your pitch and fine-tune your solution as well, because in the end, what are you going to do? You have that great idea, but nobody's going to invest in you. If you can pull it off yourself, and you have the money to be able to pay people to do it and bootstrap yourself, right? To do it with your own money. Perfect. Congratulations. I wasn't able to. I needed outside money to be able to pay myself and to pay people working with me on it. So we went down the investment route, and at one point we had fine-tuned it in a way where an investor said, "Ah, cool, this could work." And then they served as a testimonial for other investors, and we got a group of investors together that said, "Okay, awesome, let's do it." So we got our Series Seed in 2021, around a year after we founded the company initially, and had done initial development and so on. And hired people. A year later, raised their Series A, and also got funded by the European Union. It was like a grant, no equity grant that the European Union gives to technology companies that are very innovative, right? So you get support, and you run like a 2-year project. It's called Horizon, and it's pretty cool. Like, it's quite bureaucratic, talking about the European Union, but it's fine if you get the support and the monetary support to be able to pull something like this off. So this is kind of what we've gotten over time, and have now reached, because it's so complex. What we're doing is so complex to break through all of that noise and also develop a solution which has hand and foot, that we're now at a point of like selling, right? And that's pretty cool. And I think there's so many things that I've learned along the way. Again, I just want to like motivate people to like, go beyond themselves. If they really see a niche that they could take on, just do it. If it doesn't work out, well, you've made a great experience. Like if this goes wrong tomorrow, let's face it, it's a startup. It could still go right. In many years, it could still go wrong, right? It's not a waste of time. It's a massive experience, that I've made. Maybe I haven't become rich, but I've become richer in so many different aspects. Not monetary, maybe, but professionally and personally as well, right? I've learned, I created such a thick skin, of like stress resilience, because there's so much, pardon my French, shit flying at you the whole time that you have to deal with, that at one point you're just like, why did I complain in the past about, this problem here, this problem that? Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, let's face it, but it's something that is it's a reward at the end of the day if you see people around you that the team that you've created, and managing people that you can help grow and that pull in the same string. Everybody's sitting in the same boat trying to like solve a problem that hasn't been solved yet. Is just a different culture that you're able to create, and that's pretty cool. And I mean, to myself, like as a COO, I'm automatically kind of like the person for everything a little bit,
For the shit,
so
for all of the shit.
comes in, exactly, whatever comes in, there's this Tilo filter first, and I'm trying to like, pick out what what's important, what not, and how we slot it in, etc. So I mean, operationally, there's so many more things that you do in the beginning of a startup than later in terms of scope, right? So like taking care of marketing, IT, HR, process internally, projects, and kind of admin, all of that stuff, customer support, all of that falls on your plate, and it's pretty cool. I don't remember a single day in the last 5 years that I haven't done 5 different things at the same time, right? It's not that I whatever work just on a marketing aspect for one day, or just HR and doing some contracts. No, it's many different things at the same time, and that's interesting, and that's cool. And I think for this you need to be a generalist. You also said that you're not really a specialist, right? And that's what I feel as well. I don't have one single specialty. I'm a generalist, and that skill set is actually quite sought after in many industries, but also countries. It is less sought after, and this is what I've recently read, for example, in Germany, because you do not have such an innovative mindset in Germany, and this is what hurts the German economy now. In Brazil, on the other hand, companies want that skill set because they're branching out, they're going beyond, they're innovating the whole time. They need people like us generalists to be able to like slot things into the business, into the usual business, right? And that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I love your journey and everything that you've been saying. To be honest, I didn't expect us to have so many similarities. And yeah, I mean, I also am just on the brink of starting my own company. And you mentioned, I mean, I did start my own company already last year, even while I was still a director of operations at this tourism startup, because I wanted to go into coaching. I mean, I have to go the consulting route, which is actually something that I really like now as well. But in Austria, even like I just applied for this coaching education thingy where I paid about 20 grand to become a certified life and business coach. And the fun thing is, only later I realized, oh, I couldn't even like act out my coaching business in Austria if I wasn't lucky enough to have had the experience at justytakeaway.com in several positions as a city operations manager, as a team lead, as a country manager, where I had this business acumen and proven business knowledge, and then actually on top of that, the director role of operations to become an official consultant in Austria and get my consulting license without having to pay for it, without having to do a test. Luckily, it was just like testimonials that were enough for that, so I can coach in business context, right? And now actually this whole thing developed into this bigger thing, which you can see behind me a little bit, but I don't want to go too much into my venture. But it has to do with martial arts. It has to do with coaching, and it's basically built on the 5 dysfunctions of a team that I've encountered. I've encountered the book through my 2 black belts in jiu-jitsu. Once in the gym in the morning, Ibra told me about, hey, have you heard about the 5 dysfunctions of a team? Like, no, never. And he's like, yeah, it's a really good audiobook. It's a fictional story. I listened to it and I was like, wow, this makes so much sense. Basically, it's 5 layers that are always lacking. And it starts with the foundation of trust, right? I saw that, working in a big corporate, or like in the startup section of a big corporate, where I was building my team on trust because I didn't have anything else. I had to work every day for the first 30 days until I could take my first day off, even though I was hired. Like, it was completely illegal, actually, what they did to me. And it was a big company already, so they would have known that, but I was happy to have the chance, right? And because of that, because the people have seen me and they trusted me, I generated also that trust towards them, or at least towards certain individuals who proved who proved that I could trust them. And then they started actually taking over stuff that I would have never dreamed of. And Graz all of a sudden became this learning and education hub and became this really cool place just because of this foundation of trust that was there due to mutual accountability, which is the next, or like one of the further steps, because between that comes conflict, right? So you have the foundation of trust, and then you have to be able to go into informed conflict and be able to go out of it unscathed, or at least like a little bit smarter and learning from some stuff. And then if you don't have that, you will never have a commitment. You will never have like real accountability and ownership. And then the results are just basically like, being, I don't know, you're having kind of results and numbers, but the way that oftentimes they're being used are basically just to argue that someone is right. And I saw that at the highest level at Lieferando, how the numbers were manipulated to save somebody's ass, and how like the local operations were not being supported through these numbers. Like, we literally did the same mistakes 5 years in a row despite us yelling no, and we knew the results would come, and they did come. And and every year around they would ask us, why didn't you say that, or why didn't you do that? Like, we did. You just didn't want to listen. You just thought we were stupid, right? And when you don't have the trust towards your people, this is what is always going to happen. And unfortunately, I saw that in the company in the later company as well, where it wasn't even so much about the trust. It was just about maybe them realizing that in the long run, it's not going to work out that much. And then they just started firing people and basically blaming it all on them. But this also, creates a toxic kind of company. And then it all is depending on trust. And this is something that I want to fix through that martial arts approach with the 5 main belts in jiu-jitsu: white, blue, purple, brown, and black, actually covering all of these aspects from a mindset perspective, but also the mats don't lie, and you can attack like human issues in a very, very interesting way. Because let's face it, and you know it probably as well, everything is a human issue, right? Or like everything is rooted in communication. And sometimes we actually want to understand each other, and we're saying the same thing. I see it oftentimes with my girlfriend as well. We mean the same thing, but we're somewhat dissonant in terms of like perspective and how we want to perceive it right now, or how we can perceive it right now. And I think like in scaling companies, oftentimes investment or outside investors are creating pressure And sometimes founders, sometimes employers are creating pressure that should not be there. And this is an aspect that I wanted to ask you, because you had to go for outside investment. You don't have the biggest team so far. You could have probably been pushed to scale much faster and break your system over and over again. But how are you dealing with, how many people do you have now? And how do you make sure that you always deliver operational excellence? Because I guess this is something that, especially in your area, in the encryption space, where you want to deliver safety above anything, how do you tell them, like, hey guys, if we do this badly just because we want to deliver quickly, we're gonna basically lose our case? How do you steer against that?
I think that from the beginning, we get a feeling of who we need in the company. So we hierarchy started with 8 people, a team of cryptographers, a product person, and and 2 other developers. That's it, and then founders besides founders, of course. And then over time hired more and more people depending on the demands, right? That's what you do. You can't go ahead and hire 100 people blankly in a startup. You're gonna have to figure out what you need, who you need, etc. We've done many mistakes, many mistakes. People wise, skills wise, like there were a lot of people who came in. We realized after a time, doesn't fit 100%. It's kind of a discovery process throughout the time. Rarely somebody stays for many years in a company that you start from scratch, that goes through different phases, right? Because people have skill sets that work for specific phases of the company, and people have mindsets that work for different phases. And we're lucky because we're still working with people that started with us, more than 4 years ago now, which is pretty cool. But that's not the norm, and that's okay. If somebody leaves after 2 3 years, they've done a fantastic job, and they've delivered what their skill set was able to provide. But then you moved on to a different stage where instead of building, you scale. Then that's okay. You have to accept it. You have to move on. You have to let people go. You also have to foster their development and help them grow in a sense that makes sense for them. But having said that, I guess we scaled partially too much throughout, right? So we realized, too many people, too many directions. Let's scale down again. So there was an exercise where we had to cut a bigger part of the team. Unfortunately, good professionals, amazing people. Yes, some people get disgruntled. As part of the day-to-day business. Of course, you get bad reviews online, and you have to deal with it. In the end, it's there's a bigger picture as well that some people don't get. And unfortunately, some people are going to lose their jobs over these exercises of be free to be able to concentrate on the core business again. And what's important is to stick with people, or a size of team that you can manage, not just financially, but also from your product development perspective. So say right now we're around 25 people in the company, and that's sufficient for probably for the next one 1.5 years still, right? Let's see where things go. Of course, if things explode now and things go really well, we can also ramp up, right? But we don't want to use investor money or the sales, the money that we make from our sales in the beginning, to go ahead and just hire a massive team and then branch out. No, let's do it organically. Let's do it in a way where we know we can stay healthy, and where we can manage the culture of the team in a way that is healthy for them as well. And I guess looking at what you asked about, how to manage them operationally, and especially from a security perspective, how to cope with these issues. I think that's exactly it. If you keep the company on a level that is manageable without having to introduce layers of management that introduce other, they introduce opportunities, but also introduce other issues when it comes to managing these peoples and these teams. If you're able to run it like that for a long time, it's good. Maybe means more work for ourselves in management, but it keeps also risks low, because the weakest link in the chain is always the human. And when it comes to cybersecurity, the less people you have, the less attack surface you have. That's quite frankly it, and the smaller the company, the smaller the attack surface as well, because you have less vectors that people can exploit. Still, you have to be extremely careful. We are being bombarded like every other business with social engineering, phishing, all of these things, and supply chain attacks and whatnot. But it's easier to manage that with a team that is very focused and very specialist, than if you have a massive company with a large team, partially dysfunctional, right? And that's what I like about your idea as well. How do you overcome the dysfunctions? Because these dysfunctions are not just a problem for the culture and the management of a team, but also for the security aspects. For example, if you have a dysfunctional team, you introduce vulnerabilities into systems and into tools that these teams are managing, because they're not paying attention. They're not a part of that core structure that you need to be able to protect the company, right? And this is key, I guess.
Super interesting. Yeah, and I agree with all that you're saying, and it's nice to hear that you definitely are thinking about the integrity first and foremost, and you're keeping the team core, which I also saw like massive scale ups, and then people having to go back. The worst thing was like after a merger, seeing mass recruiting of recruiters actually, who then after 3 to 4 months, like there were hundreds of people that have been let go because they thought bringing more people into this kind of issue was not a recruitment issue, but actually like a sourcing issue more or less, or like if issues on another side. Like sometimes having a lot of money, especially as a publicly traded company, can invite you to make irrational decisions, especially if you're too far away from your core, which like in a logistics company, which food delivery was, and like is the people who are actually delivering the stuff, right? And the people who are managing the stuff who deliver that. And instead of going for local marketing and recruiting locally, they wanted to do it centrally, right? Using Randstad, or doing like centralized recruiting from Amsterdam, from London, and trying to find Austrian people. Like I already figured out the problem firsthand in Graz, when there was literally like out of 50 interviews, there were maybe 8 Austrians and Germans who wanted to work as a food delivery courier in the beginning, because the brand wasn't known. They didn't really know what was going to happen. So I had to go back to my roots of like Slavic countries, like my mom is from Slovenia, but her parents were from Serbia. So I know a little bit of like Serbo-Croatian language, right? And there were a lot of Bosnians with student visas who were willing to do the job, right? And I basically had to fight for them to get working permits via our German HR that was way too stiff and not agile enough to actually get the people in. But otherwise, we would not have been managed to, like, we had to delay the opening date already because of these sourcing issues. And we had to do this crazy approach that was coming with a lot of liabilities and compliance risks, which, because of our non-agile kind of foundation, actually led to the CFO being sued a bunch of times because we were flagging the issues, but like if you have like this big kind of administrative bubble that is just blowing up, you cannot be as agile as you should be in that kind of fast paced environment. And in the end, after 7 years, it led to the downfall of all of the Austrian operations, basically. So I already left the company 2 years earlier. And this year in August, the rest of my team, basically, that did an amazing job, was let go because they couldn't manage the operating costs, because they were dealing with the wrong assumptions. And then they basically now gave out the whole logistics to a third party logistics who are doing everything from scratch again. must have cost them hundreds of millions of euros, and they have not been using the learnings that they've made. And nowadays, when I talk about that brand, and like a ramen restaurant that recently opened here, that I back then when I scouted Salzburg, I told them, hey guys, you gotta expand to Graz because I love ramen and we're doing really good food delivery. There's like I promise, like with my name and my neck, we will deliver good food for you, and we did for a while. And then we didn't anymore because once we got enough money and enough traction, it wasn't about quality anymore that we could really stand for in the beginning. It was just about scaling for every price, and everything came to because of too much centralization, right? And people in the top that are away from the actual working people were thinking that they knew better than the people who actually knew the markets, because every market is different. Maybe it's a little bit different in your company because I mean, yes, you have different GDPR regulations, but in the end, if we're going for the underlying need of security and the individuals that want to use their data privately, and maybe at some point this is becoming a quality benchmark for people, yeah, like operators like me, for example. Like if I want to build a company, maybe I will have to think about using Waltrée from the beginning if I want to have my clients' data stored and managed safely, right? Or actually like being transmitted safely, which to be honest I have not had in mind, because I just vibe coded an app to support my idea, which is basically fully, the idea is to bring the boardroom to the mat, right? And to talk to people on site. But I somehow needed to make it scalable and more approachable. And the first thing that I encountered was like my marketing friend saying like, dude, I'm not gonna put my name and my email address into your app just to save your results. Like that's highly corrupt. I was like, oh shit, yeah, you're right. I haven't been thinking about that, right? I just had this beautiful idea of building a prototype and like making this vision, like making this idea like an actual something tangible, right? But yeah, I guess these are the things of like scaling issues, having ideas, and then just like not really facing reality. But to get back to your company and the scaling and 25 people, how they're being managed, I also saw that you have you're basically your headquarters is in Ireland. Your friend is from Ireland, so that's the CEO, I guess. Ireland is a very good well location for funding or for starting tech companies, right? But how do you manage a company now? Like, how many direct reports do you have? And for me, most importantly, how are you managing communication? What kind of meeting structure do you have to keep everybody aligned and on board?
Super difficult. I guess we were born during the pandemic, so we were born remote, and that's how it is until today. And we did not restrict ourselves to certain countries, to certain jurisdictions. We had to find talent over the world because cryptographers with that knowledge, they're not necessarily in the same place, right? Like we branched out and we found cryptographers in India and Brazil and the US and in different parts of Europe. And with that philosophy, we went in and we still work. We have our headquarters in Ireland. Different reasons. My co-founder, the principal co-founder is Irish. Let's face it, tax-wise, it's good for a technology company. That's another reason. But the third reason as well is that Ireland supports, the Irish government supports startups massively. There's financial support, there's grants, free grants, there's Enterprise Ireland is a basically a government funded, a taxpayer funded VC, and the biggest seed fund in the world is the Irish government. I think they're in 33 countries, helping Irish businesses expand from Ireland into the world and helping businesses invest in Ireland, right? This is something that blew my mind, and this is something that I've seen in Uruguay, for example. Uruguay has an organization as well. I think they're called Uruguay 21. They're doing the same thing, and it works fantastically well. And this is something that we saw very, very interesting and attractive in Ireland. There's countries, again, two of us are from Germany. I've heard horror stories when it comes to the bureaucratic hurdles that companies have to go through to be able to get support or to be able to set themselves up in Germany. I'm not saying that Ireland is a bureaucratic heaven, in terms of ease of processes, etc. But at least is easy enough to get support from the actual government because they incentivize that. So that's pretty cool. And of course we hire people in Ireland. It's the HQ. Makes sense. We're situated there, so we have employees there. But we have people in several different European countries. We have people here in Brazil because I'm here. I have the network. I know people. So it was good enough. And software engineers in Brazil are fantastic. That's another thing. And we have people in the US also because of the market. That is interesting. And that's independent of whatever's going on in the world right now. The way we set ourselves up is Ireland as an entry portal to Europe. Ireland as a bridge to North America, because Canada and the US are, let's face it, an interesting market, no matter for which technology business, and to have that connection with myself to Brazil, right? So these people came on board. We tried to from the beginning manage them across time zones and across countries in a quite collaborative and agile manner. So of course we're using the agile development tools and methodologies for software engineers especially to work together. We have certain time slots that work well for everybody together, where we do town halls and meetings, team meetings and retros, etc., where everybody is available, no matter where they are right now in the world. So all the way from, say, West Coast US to India, which is early morning, late evening, it works, right? And that's pretty cool. But I think you have to create that mindset as well. You need people to be flexible. You need people to be open towards working in one language that is not necessarily theirs, which is English, because that's the language technically that everybody speaks. We've had people that we know whose English was very basic, and over the years has just become really fantastic, which is really cool to see as well. So you're helping people with their profile and international career objectives, right? Which is super cool. And I think you just have to stay close to people in terms of look, let's have these calls, even though it's not face to face, physically, it's face to face virtually, and keep in touch and see people as often as possible. But just try to be flexible, I think everybody just really appreciates it. We've had people, traveling, doing kind of like a work and travel for a month or 2 months in Europe, because they wanted to discover. It's yeah, go ahead. Look, as long as you're available, and you do your thing during the day, go ahead and discover the world. Why would I try to capture people and imprison them in one place if they're happier and in the end more productive when they are wherever they want to be, right? Of course there's limits as to when it comes to relocation. I can't just say okay, the whole Brazilian team now wants to move to Ireland. I can't pay everybody all of a sudden 50% more just because they want to live. No, that it doesn't really work that way. So you have to have limits, of course, but usually that doesn't happen, because people do feel comfortable where they are at home. And as soon as we talked about in the beginning, the circle closes, right? If you have your societal connections and your group of friends and your family, that's usually where you feel most at home and most comfortable. But if really somebody wants to change their life and wants to take a leap into a different direction, we support that. Absolutely.
And I love that. And yeah, like looking at the time, because we have our slot still open for 20 minutes, and I actually need to take a nap because I have another podcast with a friend from the US that's purely a jiu-jitsu based context
Nice.
podcast actually. But actually he became a GM for a team. I hope you will watch it because it's also an interesting story that Travis has.
Absolutely.
But the full circle thing, I've been recently talking about doing a presentation for Gründerio, an Austrian business. I don't know how you would call them, like Austrian business for business owners that basically connects them and creates nice networking events centered around different topics. And I try to, like, like I thought I needed to deliver something professional and like something like from a lean experience or how to manage people, how to scale a business. And it's like, yeah, we're actually looking more for stories and like, like, but I've been thinking I'm more of a connector, like, or I've been always a connector. Like I've basically connected circles of people that never had anything to do with one another, and then I left, and they would still hang out way later. And like nowadays, I'm coming back, and I'm here in Innsbruck now for 6 years, and I feel like even though I might be venturing out and living partly somewhere else, I found my tribe here, and I felt like this is the word that I had in mind for what you found in Brazil as the society community, because it's not the entire society that is your kind of people, right? But it's enough to have your group of people, and I call them your tribe, and they can be sitting anywhere, but they share a mindset. They sometimes see each other. Maybe it's online, but maybe sometimes physical. It's not. It's a little bit boundaryless, and this is what I loved about the culture and the tribe, the big tribe of jiu-jitsu. I mean, not every club is the same, and not every club is like super open, but most are. So this gave me the opportunity back to the travel. Wherever I traveled when I was working with Lifarando, I just took my stuff and looked at gyms where I could train, and I made amazing friends. I actually made the best friends competing, even though I never really wanted to compete, and now I actually want to win the worlds in my age and belt division, which, yeah, it's weird, but like this kind of tribe of the global jiu-jitsu community just open up so many opportunities, and I've never felt more home, not necessarily to this location of Innsbruck, but to those people, right? And as a world citizen as a jiu-jitsu doing world citizen, and now I have to do a little bit of my pitch because you are in Brazil and you never did Brazilian jiu-jitsu, bro. um, do I
True,
really
yeah.
have to come to Sao Paulo to go to the mats together, or will you do it before I come? Because this is something that you really have to try. Um, but anyways, let's go back to a little bit of the traveling aspect and how this shaped you and how you found your tribe here. We don't have too much time, and I actually want to have this a conversation crisp at like around 1.5 hours. But what is the what are the most important aspects that throughout your journey that shaped you and that actually enabled you to create this beautiful company that is driven by a vision of unity and actually helping people? Yeah, what was it like? If you have anything to give to the audience, what would you say?
Think- I guess from several perspectives, right? Like first of all, coming from one continent and a country that is quite structured, going to another continent to a country which is, yeah, say like there's more chaos, let's put it like that. Um, and also coming to a city, being Sao Paulo, which is an absolute melting pot and an absolute mixture of every part of society you can imagine, from rich to poor, over different religions, different skins of colors of skins, different attitudes, and different age groups as well. Kind of, you have like that whole aspect, right? Um, over seeing what life looks like in different countries, um, is one bit of it, right? The second part is, I think, the risk aspect. What is risk? how do you really define risk, and how do you define risk for yourself? And I forgot who it was, but like somebody broke that down for me once in terms of like question after question, in terms of like, okay, so if this goes wrong, well, what happens? And I'm like, well, then I guess I'll do that. It's like, okay, and if that goes wrong, what do you then? It's like, well, I guess I'll do that. It's like, okay, so you're fine. Everything's fine. You're good. And I guess if you create that mindset, that gives you a different perspective on life, and gives a different perspective on what you want to do in your professional career as well. And the third one is friends, and family. Family you don't choose, but friends you choose. Family is a support, different kind of support network than your friends are. Your friend group you create, and if you have the right friends that share your mindset, right, that share a certain attitude that helps you grow with like a healthy exchange of opinions and of experiences and support, etc. I think you're able to achieve a lot more than a person who is quite closed minded and doesn't have that friend of a group of friends to be able to rely on when it comes to like tough times, and also exchange ideas, right? And at least for myself, and I'm quite open-minded and inclusive and hungry for world peace. Doesn't look like it at the moment, unfortunately, but this is something that I found in my friend group, and that has shaped me a lot, and it has shaped me here in Brazil. And I like your word that you used, which is tribe. I found my tribe here, but I have my tribe in Germany as well, and in other parts of the world that I've kind of created over the last kind of 15 to 20 years. And they all match somehow, right? And I love what you said before, being a connector. It's like, if I bring two people, one from Spain together with another one from Argentina, they're of the same mindset, because they're my tribe. I chose them based on the mindset that I have, right? So they're gonna get along. I know they're gonna get along. So if one visits the other country, I'm connecting, they're gonna become friends. And that network, I think, is really, really cool, and kind of shaped me, shaped the person who I am now, and the person who I'm professionally, and who I want to be, in the future. But I'm always open to changing, because we're not stuck in our ways. And I think that's an important message to everyone out there. It's like, if you want to change, go ahead and change. Do something about it. Not just sit on your couch and be grumpy and complain about life. Do something about it, right? And I think if you have the right network, the right tribe, they're supporting you in that as well, no matter where you live in the world. If I go back to Germany now and I haven't seen friends there for 6 months, they're not angry at me because I left for 6 months. They're happy to see me, and we're back to normal. That's it.
Wow. That's absolutely beautiful. And I'm so happy that we had this conversation, Tilo. What's next for
Likewise.
you? What's next for you and for Waltree? Where is this journey going?
Yeah, I guess for Vaultree specifically, like, growth is now on the table. Scale is on the table. So we want to make this big. We want to make this become something that is a reference in the field. So it's going to be quite exciting as well. And I guess for me personally, I've learned to take it, as I go. I intend to not plan too much. Financially is one bit, of course, saving up, etc. But like, when it comes to, where am I going to live? What's my life going to look like, etc. I learned over the last couple of years that it's not worth planning, because it comes, it doesn't come as you plan anyways. Like, and my wife is the same way. We're just like, right now we're happy, we live our lives, we're healthy, luckily. Let's see where the road takes us, because we're living in a society, living in a world that is, connected. There's so many opportunities. Let's stay open-minded, and it's going to be a definitely exciting journey ahead. Yeah.
Well, I love it. And maybe I'm actually gonna stick with the surviving white belt. Because you talked about the risk. right now, for example, for me, I don't know if I wouldn't have lost my job and gotten fired so spontaneously. I'm not sure whether I would be where I am now, which is still freaking broke. Like really, I've never been that broke in my life, but at the same time, there's so many opportunities on the horizon, and like, I mean, it's amazing what you realize when you burn all the boats. I had it on the last podcast with Toom. He had the similar situation with his gym just before opening it. Like he had to burn all the boats. He had to go all in, and like once you actually have to do it, you see the world from different eyes. And I also realized that money is not a risk factor. Like, I mean, as long as you have it, you're kind of afraid to lose it. But like now that I'm not having any, like literally not any. I have never been happier because the community around me, the friends, my girlfriend, like I would not have these kind of quality people in my life and realize who they are, because this is also something that you realize once you either are on the downfall or actually on a weird uprise. There's some people that you might lose on the way, and others that you would never thought would become such great companions. So out to everybody out there, become a surviving white belt or become a white belt at something. Try something new. Be like Tilo, move to a different country, find your tribe, become a Brazilian. It's amazing. But Tilo, one request to you, really. You have to try Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu still this year. Really. Please do it.
I promise I'll try it now. One of my best friends here actually does it. So I'm just asking for it. For
Yes.
a class, for sure to try it out. Capoeira I have to try as well. Like, damn,
Yes.
I've never done capoeira. And
Yeah, but Jiu-Jitsu is much more important.
I promise that.
I mean, I heard that capoeira is great, but Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like one thing I think that's like, I like the surviving white belt, like just to close the, to close that thing off, because it is so important in karate as well, to realize, and this is what this is actually cool, a really quick anecdote. I have a black belt, and I came here and I started in this dojo, where they don't accept your black belt because they haven't trained you. So like I took out my black belt from my backpack, and he was like, "Whoa, sorry, here we start from scratch." So they gave me a white belt, and I was back to being a white belt for quite a time, until I was able to, like, in an instant, advance to a brown belt, and then go back to your black belt. Right? You don't have to go through all phases. Although in the actual exam, they make you do all of the steps. So it's always like, okay, now the yellow belts and Tilo, now the green belts and Tilo. You're absolutely wrecked after that exam. But oh well, it taught me something. That is it's patience. It's swallowing down your own ego, because you look on the side, you see the black belts training, you're like, damn, and I'm doing the basic techniques here, but you go back to the basics and you realize, whoa, I actually needed that, it's that humbleness that you learn from that. It was a massive lesson in my life, and it helped me as well in business, right? Like, be patient, be like humble and resilient as well. And I think being a white belt doesn't mean that you're a beginner. Being a white belt means that you still have to continue mastering the basics. You're never done mastering the basics. You with 90 years of, like, whatever, 80 years doing martial arts, you're never done training the basics. And this is, I think, like, that's why I like the surviving white belt, because, like, come on, it's a whole life in front of you. It's a journey, like, why do you have to achieve the next step and the next step and the next step, the next milestone? Like, go with it, go with the flow, learn. It's a lifelong learning process, right? And it's a lifelong white belt attitude that you have to carry with you, actually, no matter what grade you are.
I couldn't have said it better. We have to stop here. Thank you, Tilo, so much. And send me a photo of your first jiu-jitsu class, and that will definitely, if you fulfill that promise, I'm gonna visit you definitely very soon in Sao Paulo. I've never been to Brazil. I've been waiting to have somebody in Brazil that I can finally visit, and I would love for it to be you. So yeah, here's my promise to you. come to Sao Paulo at some point. Definitely. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
And
Thank you, Marco.
good luck on all your journeys, and very curious to see where the Waltrée journey is going.
Likewise. Curious where you're gonna take this thing.
Thank you for the great conversation.
Thanks.